liability. So, by premise liability, what do I mean? Well, premise liability, what do I mean? Premises are just the dwelling in which we live. That is property, real estate, any piece of property. That's premises. For example, you may be living in your own house. You may be leasing or renting somebody's property. You may have a tract of land or piece of property. Those, or you have a piece of real estate. Those are all real estate. But premises is also where usually, where one conducts business or one lives. And there are liabilities involved when you go to a friend's house, you go to the store, you go to a party, you go to a friend's house, a neighbor's house, and some injury or something happens to you on that premises. So, what would be the basis of liability? If, for example, you become injured or you become hurt, or someone else comes to your property with or without your consent, with or without your knowledge, with or without your approval, with or without your invitation, and what happens? So that is the basis of what is called premises liability. Premises meaning the dwelling, and liability meaning that somebody has to be held accountable or responsible in the event of injury or damage, for that matter. Now, the basis for premise liability is that the duty of the owner or possessor of property to people injured on their property depends on the injured person's status on the property. Let me repeat that. The duty of the owner or possessor of property to people injured on their property depends on the injured person's status on the property. So what do I mean? The basis of premise liability. So again, if you are the owner of a property or the possessor of a property, when someone comes on that property, when that person is injured, the extent of liability depends upon that status or the relationship of that person who has ventured onto your property or onto that property. And there are generally different types of people that you can classify who can come to your property, and we will examine them and see where you fit in the event that you may have been injured on somebody else's property or somebody else's premises, and see who is liable, whether you the injured person is liable, or the property owner or the person in possession of the property is liable. First, we have what is called an invitee. An invitee. An invitee is a person who is invited or permitted to be on another's property for purposes related to the owner or owner's business. So again, let me repeat. Who is an invitee? An invitee is a person who is invited or permitted to be on another's property for purposes related to the owner's or occupier's business. So, for example, I invite you to my property or to my business to conduct a business or for a purpose that is going to benefit me, the owner. And so I have a work to be done on my home, and I know that you are an electrician. So I invite you to my home to come and do work on my property or on my business. and the purpose is related to that invitation. You are not a social guest. I'm having invited you to come and let's drink or let's have dinner. You are just an invited. You are just an invitee. I've invited you for the purpose related to the reason why I have invited you to my piece of property. So you are an invitee. Such a person is called an invitee. Now, there's also another category called social guest or licensee by invitation. Licensee by invitation or social guest. A social guest or licensee by invitation is a person who is on the property of another at the express or implied invitation of the owner or occupier for reasons unrelated to the owner's or invitee's business. Now, let's distinguish this. The first one, the invitee, is being invited to your premises related to, it is related, that invite is related to that owner's business or for that purpose. So there is a relationship. So the electrician is invited to the premises for purposes of fixing or making some electrical repairs. Now, so that is an invitee. Now, the social guest or licensee, also by invitation, has been invited by the owner, but it is unrelated to that owner's business or interest. So that is unrelated. So I have a friend, and or my neighbor, or I just invited the person to my house or to my business. You know, that invitation is not related to the business to which I am operating. It may be for something else, totally different from the business in which I operate. So it is unrelated to the property owner or the possessor, business. That is why they've been invited. Now, a third category is called bare licensee. Bare licensee. Now, a bare licensee is a person who is on the property with the consent. Again, with the consent, but not at the invitation of the owner or occupier, and who is there to serve his or her own interest, but not to serve any interest of the owner or occupier. Sounds very loaded, but what this means is that the bare licensee is that, well, you have a property, and I need to maybe pluck a flower or maybe a plant from your property. So I call you, Mr. Doe or Mrs. Doe. I see you have a plant, a flower in your backyard. Can I go and just pluck a flower from your backyard? And the owner says, okay, go ahead. Feel free to go ahead. So you have the consent of the owner to go into the backyard to pluck that flower. But remember that the flower that you are going to pluck is not for the interest of the owner, but it is for the benefit, it is for your own interest. It is for your own interest. And so, again, there's a difference. The bare licensee goes on the property of another with the owner's consent, but not to benefit the owner, but is to benefit you yourself, you the person going onto somebody else's land. And then the fourth category is what is called a trespasser. A trespasser. A trespasser is a person who is on the property of another without the consent of the owner or occupier of the property. In other words, you just went onto somebody else's property without the owner's consent, without the owner's knowledge, without the owner's, permission. So you just entered onto somebody's land. A trespasser could also be that you own a piece of property. Now you have tenants. Now you have a lease with the tenants in the house. And maybe a tenant or someone has invited somebody else to come and stay in the house. That person, as far as the landlord, as far as the owner is concerned, you are a trespasser because you don't have any relationship with the landlord. You are not on lease agreement with the landlord. You are not on the property with the owner's permission. The owner has not invited you on the property. You are not doing anything on that property to benefit the owner, but it is to benefit yourself. And you are on the property without the consent or the knowledge of the owner. So you are a trespasser. You are a trespasser. And so these are 4 categories under which someone can be held liable or not liable when they enter onto somebody else's premises. So that is the basis of the premise liability. Now we are going to go into detail because it is very, very important for us to understand that, for example, when you go into the store to buy something, what are you? Are you an invitee? Are you a licensee? Are you a trespasser? Or you are a social guest? Someone invites you to their house. They are having a party, and they invite you into their house. How would you categorize yourself? Are you an invitee? Are you a social guest? Are you a bare licensee? Or maybe you are just a trespasser. You are just trespassing. You are on the property without the owner's consent or without the owner's permission. So we are going to take our very first break, and we'll give out the number to call in or to dial in: 301-221-5727. 301-221-5727. Let's take a short break and we'll be right back.
Wake up every morning to great insight and information on the greatest mid-morning show in the DMV community from 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 12 noon right here on Zoe Light Radio with segments like Christian entertainment news, discussion, and prayer hour. Don't touch that dial.
This is Zoe Light Radio.
Did you know your heart isn't only your most critical muscle, it's what keeps you alive? Your heart is about the size of a fist. It beats about 100,000 times each day and generally slows down as you age. I'm sure that you already know that depression, excessive sitting, smoking, lack of exercise, and a host of other things will generally increase the risk of a heart attack.
My name is Dr. Isaac Opokwasare. I am an interventional cardiologist. Make a date with me on Tuesdays and Saturdays at 6 p.m. on Zoe Light Radio as we discuss how to keep your heart healthy. Call or send me your questions at 301-221-5727 during the show, and I'm ready to answer them.
Healthy Heart is proudly brought to you by Cardiovascular Solutions, a non-profit organization.
Okay, welcome back to Law Matters with your host, Kwaku Ofori. And we've been discussing the basis of premise liability. The telephone number to dial in is 301-221-5727. 301-221-5727. And before we went on our break, we were talking about the 4 types of classes. We talked about the invitee. We talked about the social guest or licensee by invitation. We've talked about the bare licensee, and we talked about the trespasser. Now, let's go into a little detail about the invitee. I mean, as I said, the invitee is the one who has been invited, who has been invited or permitted to be on another's property for purposes related to the owner or occupier's business. There are two types of invitees. There is the business invitee and there's the public invitee. The business invitee and the public invitee. But before that, there are two doctrines under which an invitee can be established, either for the mutual benefit or by implied invitation. So remember that the invitee has been invited either directly or indirectly by implication. And there are also a business invitee and a public invitee. Now, the business, let's try to explain. The business invitee is on the premises for the purposes of the business under which they have been invited. And so, if you are selling goods, you are selling stuff, and a customer comes in, the customer is a business invitee because the customer has been invited through the sale or the use of your services to be a part, to come onto your premises. So if you own a store, we go to the grocery store all the time, and the store owner doesn't have to call you to come, but you know that there is a store, they sell groceries. And so you as a customer, you go to the store to buy. And so you are at the invitation of the store owner or the business to be a part of the business in which the store operates. And so you are a business invitee because you are there for the purposes of that business. And there's also a public invitee. And so the public invitee is a member of the public for a purpose for which the land is held open to the public. And so, for example, when we talk about public invitee, you go to the museums. It's a public place. And so you are a public invitee. The doors are open to the public. You go to the library, to the public library. It is open to the public. And so anybody can go there. You are a member of the public. And so you can go there and check out books, visit the museum, visit wherever is open to the public. So you are a public invitee. Okay, you are a public invitee. Now, when you are invited, you have to stay within the boundaries of your invitation, because if you exceed your boundaries, you could be considered a trespasser. So if you exceeded your invitation or the extent to which you were invited, you could be asked to leave. So, for example, you go to the store and you go to cause trouble. To pick up a fight with a customer or to engage in something which is inappropriate, then you may have exceeded your invitation. And for that matter, you could be asked to leave. Now, if you don't leave and you remain on the premises, then you become a trespasser. And so the police or some authority could be asked to get you out of the premises. And so there is a limit, or there is an extent to which your invitation or your presence on the premises is valid. There are times where you may exceed your invitation. Now, there are also persons who may be invited on the premises to inspect certain items on the premises at the invitation of the owner. And so here you may be properly on the premises as an invitee. Let me give out the number again. It's 301-221-5727. 301-221-5727. Call in, send us a text about your questions or concern with regard to premises liability, because we enter and go into places every day. We enter and go into premises, whether it's public or business, every day. We go into the public arena. We go into the public library. We go into the public schools. We go into the grocery stores. We go into the malls. We go into all kinds of places. And what happens? If there is a mishap or there is injury that is caused on you, or that's the landlord or the owner of the premises may be negligent, then do you have a cause of action against that person or entity? That is why it is important to know the reason or what classification you fall under. Now, you may think, for example, you may have a cause, but you may be a trespasser. You may be on somebody else's property without their permission, without their consent, without their knowledge. And as far as they are concerned, you are a trespasser. They did not invite you. You did not have their you just are loitering on their piece of property, and for some reason you got hurt or you got injured. So you cannot blame the landlord or the owner of the property as the cause of your injuries. You may be a trespasser as far as the owner is concerned. And so let's take another look. We just talked about the invitee. Let's talk about the trespasser. As I just said, an invitee using the property in a manner exceeding his or her invitation is a trespasser as to that conduct. As I just said, if you are using, you may be invited. You may have been invited. But if you exceed that authority, that boundary by which you were invited, then you become a trespasser. Then you could become a trespasser. Persons on the properties for their convenience or benefit, but with the owner's or occupier's consent, are termed bare licensees. Now, again, persons without prior permission to inspect property for purposes of purchase or purposes of being there, for example, is considered a trespasser. Again, a trespasser may be someone who is on the premises without your consent or who has exceeded their stay. For example, just this evening, I had a call from someone looking for some advice. And what it was that now he's interested, he wants to evict someone from their house. he wants to evict someone from their house. And the eviction is that, well, this is the mother of his child. So that's his daughter's mother. Okay, that's the daughter's mother. And the mother has a place to stay. Already, she has her own place. But the child lives with the father. And so in order for the mother and daughter to bond, he, with permission, the mother comes to the house and sometimes stays with the child in order for them to bond. But it's gotten to a point where he believes that the mother has now overstayed. And so he wants to evict her from the house. Now, the question is, what kind of status is she? Is she a trespasser? Is she an invitee? Or is she a social guest? I believe she was, or she is, an invitee because he was invited by the man. But it's gotten to a point where the man believes that she has exceeded her stay, and so now wants her to leave. So by wanting her to leave, if she doesn't leave, then she becomes a trespasser because now she is staying in the house without the permission of the man. And so bear in mind, sometimes we see this all the time. You have a friend who comes to stay with you for a little while. Maybe he says, I'm coming to stay with you. I need a little place to stay for about a month. So he comes to stay for about a month just to straighten things out. Now the month has gone, 2 months, 3 months, and the friend is not leaving. And he's not also telling you when he or she is going to leave. And you believe that you could also use the space because you only accommodated this person for about a month. So the person has exceeded his or her stay. And so when you tell the person to leave and the person doesn't leave, so now the person has become a trespasser because he's trespassing on your property because they have exceeded their stay. So this is one way by which, an invitee could become a trespasser. And then you can now evict or ask the person to leave because they are there without your permission. We are going to take another break, our last break. And the number to dial in is 301-221-5727. 301-221-5727. Send us your text, send us your questions about premises liability. We'll be right back.
Did you know your heart isn't only your most critical muscle, it's what keeps you alive? Your heart is about the size of a fist. It beats about 100,000 times each day and generally slows down as you age. I'm sure that you already know that depression, excessive sitting, smoking, lack of exercise, and a host of other things will generally increase the risk of a heart attack.
My name is Dr. Isaac Opokwasare. I am an interventional cardiologist. Make a date with me on Tuesdays and Saturdays at 6 p.m. on Zoe Light Radio as we discuss how to keep your heart healthy. Call or send me your questions at 301-221-5727 during the show, and I'm ready to answer them.
Healthy Heart is proudly brought to you by Cardiovascular Solutions, a non-profit organization.
Wake up every morning to great insight and information on the greatest mid-morning show in the DMV community from 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 12 noon right here on Zoe Light Radio with segments like Christian entertainment news, discussion and prayer hour. Don't touch that dial.
This is Zoe Light Radio.
Okay, welcome back to Law Matters. This is your host, Kwaku, Ofori. Again, the number to dial in is 301-221-5727. 301-221-5727. We continue our discussion on premise liabilities, and let us look at the duty of an invitee, someone who has been invited onto the property with the owner's consent and or permission as it relates to the owner's business. And so the duty owed to an invitee is to use reasonable care to see that those portions of the property that the invitee may be expected to use are safe. Let me repeat. The duty owed to an invitee is to use reasonable care to see that those portions of the property that the invitee may be expected to use are safe. In other words, when you invite someone onto your property, you must make sure that where the invitee is going to use that portion of your property, whether your house or your business, where the person is going to use are safe. They are safe, so that no harm is caused upon them. Now, generally, the possessor of land is liable to invitees, those you invite, for conditions on the land if the possessor knows or should know that the condition on the land or on the premises involves some risk of harm. So, for example, if the owner knows or should know that there is harm that may be caused upon the invitee, and such harm is caused, then that owner of land or property may be held liable for any harm or injuries caused to the invitee. Now, another duty is that where the owner should expect that the invitee will not discover or realize the danger, or will fail to protect themselves against it, and also fails to exercise reasonable care to protect them against such danger. All what we are saying here is that for an owner of property to be held liable for injury to an invitee is that if the owner fails to exercise reasonable care to protect the invitee against any danger, and also the owner should know that the invitee will not discover the danger. So let's give an example. I come onto your property. You've dug a hole on your land, and you know that you've dug a hole on the land. You didn't tell me. You walk me around the land, and without any sign or without anything to cover the hole, you left it open, or you've covered it slightly, that someone may likely fall into the hole and injure themselves. And I'm walking with you, and we walk around where you know or should have reason to know that there is a hole dug under the ground, and I fall into it, and I hurt myself. Now, you may be held liable to my injuries because you owed me a duty to use reasonable care to protect me and to make me safe on your property. Okay, so we will take one call, or we have a listener who has turned in a question. It says, can the owner of a house where my kids were invited to play and got injured be liable to be sued? Well, depending upon the status of these people, of your children. Are they invitees? Are they trespassers? Are they social guests? Or are they, or what kind of, or what kind of category do they fall? So that is why we are discussing this, because it depends upon the category or the class in which they fall. So if they were invited, they were invited and they are invitees, then you have to make a determination. Now, if they were trespassers, that's another thing. But it says here, where the kids were invited to play and they got injured. So they may be invitees. Now, the injury, was the owner aware? Did the owner expect them to be safe? Did the owner take steps to ensure that there is not unreasonable risk of harm on the land or on the property in which they got injured? So here you may need to seek some counsel and get details and the facts of what may have happened. So I would suggest that you consult with an attorney or someone who is knowledgeable about this area. But again, more facts are needed to make that determination. It says, my ex continues to intrude my privacy by uninvitingly coming to my premises at any time I am having a function. So what do I do? Well, if this ex is uninvited, then she may be considered a trespasser. She may fall into the trespasser category as a trespasser. And as a trespasser, someone who has not been invited, someone who is on the premises or on the land of another without their consent. If something happens to them, then you will not be held liable because they are a trespasser. But certainly, if somebody is a trespasser, you can certainly be able to, ask them to leave your premises or to leave your land because they are trespassing. They are on your land without your permission, without your consent, or without your invitation. So that could be, that may be considered, a trespass. Again, the number to dial in is 301-221-5727. 301-221-5727. Now, and so these are some of the, generally, we are talking about invitees. Now, it is very important that you know under which category you fall, especially when you get hurt or when you get injured, because it may be that the landlord or the owner of the property may not be held liable, depending upon, again, the classification under which you entered onto the property. But certainly, if you entered onto the property with their permission, and maybe, for example, there was some water, or they have not cleared the ice or snow for that matter, and you slip on the ice or snow and you fall, there may be some liability. I mean, on the owner, because you were at their house at their invitation, or for purposes of business, maybe a business invitee, okay, or maybe for purposes of some other reason, you may be a social guest, and that would also have some implication on that. And so let us take note of that. Now, we'll take one more question from one of our guests, one of our listeners. It says, is that after my father died, my senior brother threw me out of my father's house, saying that he was going to marry. Is it right, please, when the house has not been willed to him? Well, we will need, again, some details, some more facts to make a determination. Because if your senior brother threw you out of the house that he was going to get married, if the house was not willed to him, and who is the executor or the personal representative of the estate? Is the PR of the estate your senior brother, or who may be the PR of the estate? More facts we will need more facts. But certainly, you can reach us off the air, and we can be able to answer your questions. And you can still send your questions in or concerns, and we will address them. We will address them. Again, the number is 301-221-5727. Send us your questions and concerns, and we'll address them. And our time is fast spent, and so we will round it up here, and we'll continue next time on Law Matters. It's been very interesting, and we look forward to the next time. Thank you.